All right, Kansas in the Xfinity car. So this is gonna be a second lap hot lap, which means that we just want to be saving our tires a little bit coming to our second lap. So you don't want to overdrive turn lap one or anything. You can bank a lap if you want to, since we're running top both ends, but I just find that there's like about a tenth that you're gonna be missing out on, which you might want to do. You might just want to say, hey, I want to bank in a lap on lap one and take that and maybe be a little bit slower on lap two because of it. That's probably a pretty fair scenario, and I wouldn't hold it against you for sure. I've done similar things before, but I think that the lap is easy enough to where I think you can just go for the lap two faster lap. So I'm just kind of going easy here, almost like I'm saving my tires in like a really long run type race. I don't want to overdo it or anything. And then coming into turn 3 is when we're going to start running the high side. So I'm going to try to get on the throttle as early as possible. All of turn 3 is a little sharper than you expect. So I'm trying to get on the throttle as early as possible, and then while also turning the car down so I don't slide back up into the wall. And then last second, I'm going to make that transition down, try to stay low here, then come back up at the track. Then you can stay mostly in the throttle for turn 1 and 2 here. I'm just staying right on the seam. You don't really need to slide up to the wall. It stays really loose, so you can let it track up a little bit. That was pretty darn good. And then turn 3 and 4, it's a little tighter. Might have to use a little brake here. A little easier back to the throttle just because it's a little sharper of a turn. I want the car to rotate a little bit more than in 1 and 2 as well to keep it off the wall. It's just a little bit tighter than 1 and 2 just the whole way around it, just the feeling of it. Okay, quick look at that lap here. Talked about most of the talking points, but as we are driving up here, you don't have to worry about how close you are to the wall because all of this is the same banking. So being on this part of the progressive banking is just almost as much speed. It's very marginal how much you gain by being right by the wall. And then when my right rear is rotating itself up by the fence, that is also like, okay, if I'm rotating myself, I don't really want to be in a position where I can catch my right rear on the fence. So I like to keep it right on the seam here. And you see this part of the wall juts out right here. That's going to catch a lot of people. So always keep that in mind. You want to be turning down the track a little bit more than you would think naturally coming off the corner. Just something about Kansas specifically. So again, cutting down to the apron. Try to apex that little cut down right at the start finish line and then just let the car come back up. The more that you steer to keep it low, the less momentum you're going to be carrying. So it's probably worth it just to get back up there. Turn 1. I only have to blip out to a little bit below half and then just put in like that 70-80% throttle. This is like 80%. So it's hard to tell, but if you listen to my tire, I'll shut up for a little bit here. You hear my right rear tire the whole way. That's because I'm basically on the edge of loose on the right rear the whole way, and I can maintain that by just holding that 80% throttle and using my steering wheel to correct the car and just kind of keep it on its path, just aiming at the seam, trying to keep my lefts right above this seam. You can be right by the wall if you really want to be, but again, I don't see the huge benefit of it. It's probably worth a couple hundredths maybe, and that's a lot of risk for a couple hundredths, but if you're down for that, more power to you. And you can see that the car just kind of rotates all the way through the corner. I never really do anything but beside manage the loose condition and then just let the car slide up to the wall at the very end of the corner. 3 and 4, because the turn is a little bit tighter, take a look at the shape up here in the top right. You can just see that turn 3 is a lot tighter than turn 1. That's why we got to use a little bit of brake here. Do not enter turn 3 the same way that you would enter turn 1 and expect the same result. So you see just a tiny bit of brake, keeping it by the seam and then getting back on the throttle to full. Because instead of having an open entry that tightens up, we have a tight entry that opens up. So once we make entry, we could just get back on the throttle aggressively because the exit is just going to open up. Now, because of the little safer barrier jutting out here, you just got to full throttle and then point the car a little bit lower than you think. Because even here, I almost hit the wall, even though I thought I was pointing the car pretty darn low. So don't just think that you're going to maintain the corner like you are in 1 and 2 and be fine because that wall comes up at you quick. You have to aim a little bit lower than you think that you're going to need to. And then just cut back down to the apron for the final part of the lap, and that's perfect. All right. Long run time. So Xfinity, the setups lately have been very right rear burning. So with right rear burning setups, what you want to avoid is just inputs that kick your right rear out and make it slide. Now we got to care about our right front a bit too, especially at Kansas, because it can get a little bit tight in corner entry in these cars. So it's more of like we're caring about all our tires. A lot of my videos are much about caring about the right front tire. In a lot of setups, that's true. But in Xfinity, especially these days, a couple years ago, everything was really tight and on the right front. They've loosened up recently onto the right rear to where you actually have to think about the right rear tire, which is good. So Xfinity likes this arc a lot more just because it doesn't ask as much from the right rear, keeps the car a little bit more neutral. When I have those early entries in the ARCA car, it's because I'm trying to force the car in the right rear. Here, I don't need to force the car in the right rear. So I'm just arcing it a little bit more than you would see me otherwise do it in the ARCA car. And that's allowing me to let the car handle more neutral. Times are going to fall off really quick here. I think the bottom, you can push it really hard and have it be almost as fast as the top. But for really good tire saving, you really want to make sure that you stay low as long as possible when you get there. So it's going to end up giving up a couple tenths per corner, which is why I'm thinking for restarts, if you want to run the top, I think that's a good time to utilize it. Because the top really doesn't destroy your tires that bad compared to the bottom. It's definitely worse, don't get me wrong. But if you're running 2 or 3 laps up top to gain 5 positions, that's just a good investment. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But once it all is said and done, a little bit loose there, but you kind of want that. Oopsie, that's fine. When all is said and done, you're going to want a phase of saving your tires towards the bottom of the track. It's going to go back up to the top eventually. Some people may make it work bottom the whole time. Those are the people that are really disciplined about not overdriving the bottom. So if you find yourself in a position where you have a lot of room, a lot of space, you might just want to kind of back off the bottom and see if you can make it work the whole race. Because those are the people that are going to just kind of be very consistent and have potential for a super long run to work. Generally, how Kansas goes is that after 15 to 20 laps, people move up to the top. I throttled up too early there and I got really tight. That was on the right front too much, so I had to back out. So the tires fall off fairly quickly here, even if they are pretty even. So the more your tires fall off when you make this arc, you want to just use more brake to get and hold the bottom. So this is like the perfect tire saving corner right there because I just didn't have to do any work because of the amount of brake I used. Now it lost quite a bit of time, but sometimes you have the gap to kind of make that work. And then when I have a good amount of rotation coming off the corner, you can see the difference there. We'll do a few more laps here just to get it in. Things do transition up to the top, don't get me wrong, and it's going to be fairly similar to the qualifying line, except you are going to have to brake on the entries when your tires are worn. And when you're braking on the entries, one of the big mistakes people make is they kind of try to enter the corner too hard and then brake while they're already in the corner, and that just ends up with them sliding up into the wall. You really want your braking done before you start turning. So for instance, let's say that I'm curious to see how the top line is right now anyways. So here, do a little bit of braking and then try to get back up on the throttle. So yeah, it looks like the top is a lot faster than the bottom even right now. In that case, I mean, it depends on how you run the top. I think a lot of people might try to make the top work for the whole run. It's all about the feel of the race. If you think there's going to be a lot of cautions, which there very well might be in this series, just running the top like this might be the play. Because it's aggressive, the fall off doesn't happen until late in a run, and how often do you get late in a run and be fixed? It's probably a good gamble. I think if you're trusting the lobby around you to give you a long run, I do think bottom is kind of good still. But you see how I'm doing this brake before I enter the corner? That allows me to get on the throttle early, pivot the car without really hurting the tires too much, and then just getting the max momentum coming off the corner, giving a little bit up on entry and getting a lot on exit. If it works on the bottom, why wouldn't it work on the top, you know? Let's go back to the bottom, see how we stack up. I mean, it's pretty even as you see. So I think the bottom's going to be saving more tire than the top just by default. You're going a shorter distance, usually using more brake to rotate the car than you would up on top. And if I'm only losing 1/10 of a second to the top here, tenth and a half, I guess, I think that's a good investment. Now, if you have a bunch of people trying to pass you for track position, that track position is more valuable than that little bit of tire that you're saving. So it's all about situations, right? Let's just call it a day there. So kind of showed you that multiple lines can be viable here. The bottom's going to be saving you tire. The top is going to be getting you track position. And if you do it right, it's not the worst on tire. It's a good defensive line too. But you'll see here. So like, yeah, even tire wear, that's what you're going to be looking for. Not too much tire sliding, not too much overdriving into entry. And 20 laps into the run, you're going to be thanking yourself that you did that. All right. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day. I hope to see you all on the track.